The economic impacts caused by COVID-19 outbreak on the Malaysian tourism sector, accommodation, transportation, and food and beverage. In the year 2020, government was planning to enhance Malaysia's tourism industry with the Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign. Malaysia awaits the arrival of at least 30 million tourists and around 100 billion in tourism receipts across the globe. Suddenly, the world was shocked by a newly identified virus called COVID-19 in December 2019, which took place in Wuhan, China. In March 2020, more than 100 cases were reported each day in Malaysia, and as the numbers keep increasing, Malaysian government was forced to implement Movement Control Order (MCO) start on 18 March 2020 until now with different name and different type of implementation. As an implication to this, the Visit Malaysia 2020 campaign was expected to bloom this year was cancelled. During the first MCO, many businesses were forced to close and travelling from the red zone area was restricted to further avoid the spread of the virus. All these actions has affected tourism activities in Malaysia in negative perspective. As the problem continues, Tourism's Art and Culture Minister Datuk Seri Nancy Shukri claimed that Malaysia's tourism sector are one of the most affected and had suffered a loss of RM45 billion within 6 months of 2020 due to COVID-19 pandemic. These numbers are worrying since Malaysia's tourism sector is one of the three most contributor to Malaysia's GDP. So that in this video, me, Zarif and my team member Aiman, Ashraf, Afiq, and Haris will discuss more about the economic impacts caused by COVID-19 on Malaysia's tourism sector, including accommodations, transportations, and food and beverages, which is in line with the Sustainable Development Goal 8 to promote sustained, inclusive, and sustainable economic growth, full and productive employment, and decent work for all.
Hi, my name is Alif Aiman and I'm going to present the effect of COVID-19 towards the tourism, focusing on accommodation sector. Firstly, before COVID-19 outbreak, the tourism market, which can be affected by hotel industry in Malaysia, has been a significant source of foreign exchange revenue and contribute to 9.3% of country's GDP. However, because of COVID-19 outbreak, our Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin estimated that Malaysian domestic product GDP growth for 2020 will be declined by 0.8 to 1.2%. This is because our accommodation sector is heavily affected by the pandemic outbreak, especially during the Movement Control Order. When the first phase of MCO is pronounced, the accommodation sector has suffered huge losses because many booked rooms have been cancelled. This table shows hotel room cancellation and losses due to travel fears and restrictions from January to March 2020. From this table, we can see that total room cancellation from the 12 states, there are 193,057 rooms, and the losses are more than 75 million ringgit Malaysia. As of March 2020, to overcome the impact of COVID-19 outbreak, the local hotel industry had laid off its workers with unpaid leave and wage cut. This table shows the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on hotel industry workers. This table, as we can see from the table, out of 55,000 workers, 2,000 of them are being laid off, 5,000 working facing pay cut, and nearly 10,000 workers facing unpaid leave. Malaysian Association of Hotel (MAH) has estimated that a loss of 560.72 million revenues for the Movement Control Order period. To overcome this problem, the government has played their role by provide subsidy payroll of minimum RM1,000 per employee per month for employees that earning less than 4,000 ringgit per month. Then they also waiver the loan interest, waiver of quick rent, and assessment of hotel and taxation initiative. Besides that, they also reduce the tourism tax from the existing from RM10 ringgit to RM1 ringgit per room for night. Then they also temporary waiver of fees, and lastly, the hotel is also used as quarantine center to provide their income during the MCO.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Haris Siddiq. I'm going to present the effect of COVID-19 towards the tourism, especially on the transportation sector. B. Suresh Ram cited in the New Straits Times on 17 October 2019, as in 2017, the transportation and the storage subsector contributed 3.6% to the gross domestic product with a value of 48.8 billion ringgit and 6.6% to the service sector value added. However, Director of Sales and Marketing Director Datuk Sri Uzair Mahidin said in a joint press conference with BNM that the significant drop in GDP for this quarter was due to the three stages of the Movement Control Order and the Conditional Movement Control Order implemented, which is to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in Malaysia. This is because the transportation sector is significantly affected by the pandemic outbreak, especially during the Movement Control Order (MCO). When the first phase of MCO is announced, the transportation sector, especially the airlines, had suffered a huge losses because many booked flight tickets have been cancelled. Malaysian Airlines Berhad CEO Izham Ismail told the Age Malaysia that the company was prepared to shut down if ongoing talks with leasing companies about a restructuring plan failed. This table shows that the tourist arrivals in Malaysia from January 2019 until June 2020. From this table, we can see that the huge drop in tourist arrival starting the early 2020 and then drop all the way down to zero from April until June. This is because the Malaysian Prime Minister Tan Sri Muhyiddin Yassin declared that the country's border remain closed and that under the Recovery Movement Control Order RMCO period, which is lasted till 31 December 2020. Our Malaysian government has taken a measure to overcome the impact of this pandemic COVID-19. It is starting from 1 April 2020, airlines companies as well as the other companies in the tourism industry will receive a deferment of their monthly tax payment for 6 months from 1 March 2020 until 31 August 2020.
Hello, so let's talk about food and beverage in tourism sector. So first, in introduction, we know that Malaysia have unique food, which every region in Malaysia have their own signature food that are very tasty that can attract visitors to come. As we know, food is a powerful tool in promoting great memories for tourism. So there are some examples that I put on. So in Perak we have nasi kanja, in Pulau Pinang we have nasi kandar, and in Kelantan we have nasi kerabu. So those are the food that are famous in Malaysia. So next, before and after COVID-19. Before COVID-19, food and beverage become factor that attract a lot of visitors to come, especially people outside Malaysia. So a lot of tourists attracted to Malaysian foods such as nasi lemak and roti canai because it's all very tasty and very unique that cannot be found in other country. However, after the COVID-19, there are movement control order that have been implemented by our government. So a lot of stores and shops having problem because of the COVID-19. So let's talk about what factor that causes problem in food sector, like before and after the COVID-19. Before the COVID-19, there are one factor that cause a problem, which are the food demand exceed the food production. So basically we need to import food, basic food to survive, and the prices of basic food increase over the time, like what we can see from the table here. So table on the right, there are daily production of the after COVID-19. After the COVID-19, this problem remain the same but worse. So the food production in Malaysia become very slow after the COVID-19, and this causes some changes in price, which some workers, some people in the industry need to raise their price because to adapt this situation. So there are some steps taken to overcome. From government has introduced bantuan prihatin to help the boss pay wages, and after that the owner have done online business and e-commerce in order to survive this pandemic. Thank you.
My name is Wadanur Ashraf, and today I will summarize the findings of our research. We know that the COVID-19 outbreak had caused negative impacts on tourism sectors in Malaysia, mainly focused on accommodation, transportation, and food and beverages. For accommodation, hotels are not permitted to be open since it has a risk of spreading the disease, and this has slowed down the hotels industry in Malaysia. Next, employees were laid off by given unpaid leave and wage cuts. In transportation sectors, Malaysians are not allowed to travel overseas since it is not allowed by the government. So this has impacted the airlines industry in a very bad way because flights are restricted. So no flights are allowed to move in or out of the country during the MCO. Next, in food and beverages, government had taken action to restrict the restaurant. So restaurants are only allowed to be open until 10 p.m. Next, we see a decline in sales and prices of fruits and crops by almost 50% during the MCO. Several actions have been taken to help solve this problem. For example, hotels had requested the government to pay a subsidy of 1,000 ringgit to the hotel employees that earn 4,000 ringgit and below. Next, hotels had also requested the government to reduce the tourism tax from 10 ringgit to only 1 ringgit per room night. Next, every industry that involves in the tourism sectors will be given a deferment of their monthly tax. We know that the tourism sectors have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, but right now, tourism is not really encouraged since it has a risk of spreading the disease. We hope that the tourism sectors can perform normally after the pandemic has been settled down. That's all for our group. Thank you very much.